The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings to you, beloved. Welcome to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. It is indeed a joy for me to welcome you to our show today. Once again, it is a very, very good time to be together, even though we're going through some challenging times in South Africa, the land of my birth. We've now developed a series around what's going on, so that we can get, to all that's going on there in thought-provoking yet solutions-driven dialogue, and see if we can talk about this series. I've entitled it Renewal, Resistance, and Reimagination. Renewal, Resistance, and Reimagination in South Africa, and igniting the embers of Ubuntu. Renewal, Resistance, and Reimagination in South Africa, igniting the embers of Ubuntu. And the purpose of this series, is to see how we can convene grassroots and national thought leaders, activists and advocates, to see how in our convening we can examine the current social, economic, and political crisis in South Africa, and as we do so, to see how we can explore immediate and long-term systemic solutions to recover, reset, and rebuild a more just, equal, inclusive, and equitable South Africa. And so we're going to get at the truth here. We're going to speak truth because Scripture tells us the path to freedom is paved with truth. The path to freedom, if it's not paved, will bring up the dust of truth, because that's what's going to guide us here. We will work very hard to not, get, caught up in the trap of denial and deception, which is the trap that the United States, unfortunately, has slipped into. So we will follow truth. We are using 3 frameworks to guide us in this series, just so that you can be aware of it. And this is how we basically select and invite our guests to come on. The first framework I call the Madiba framework. And that Madiba framework comes from his speech in 2005 in London entitled Make Poverty History. Then Madiba said, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality exists in the world, especially in South Africa, none of us can truly rest. And these must be restless times in South Africa. I know a lot of people talk about the unrest, but we should not forget the restlessness before the unrest. All those undercurrents, amplified by what I call the epidemic of poverty, the epidemic of injustice, the epidemic of gross inequality that continue to exist in our beloved Mzansi. We do have a scriptural framework that's very important for me as a person of faith, and that scriptural framework comes to us from Isaiah 58, verses 6 to 8. Let me read that for you from the Passion Translation, which entitles that pericope as Worship God in Truth. There you have the word again, truth, right? Verse 6 says, This is the kind of fast worship of faith that I desire. Remove the heavy chains of oppression or discrimination or racism or injustice, right? Stop exploiting your workers. Set free the crushed and mistreated. Break off every yoke of bondage. Verse 7, share your food with the hungry, provide for the homeless, and bring them into your home. Clothe the naked. Don't turn your back on your own flesh and blood. Then my favor will bathe you in sunlight until you are like the dawn bursting through the dark night. And then suddenly your healing will manifest. You will see your righteousness march out before you, and the glory of Yahweh will protect you. Then your light will shine forth. So this scripture indeed is a call to action and engagement in so many ways for what's going on right now in South Africa. There is no room for any spectators, right? We are inviting everyone to be participators, right? If you can't do much, you can do something, and we encourage you to claim your power and do that. That was our second framework. The Madiba framework was the first one, scriptural framework, the second one. Being born and raised in South Africa, I drink tea, not iced tea, but hot tea, right? And my favorite brand of hot tea is Good Earth. And so we're going to have the Good Earth framework. Good Earth has all these messages on its tags when you get your tea bag and all of that, and I kind of save those because they're very instructional and inspirational. And the one I want to use as a framework for us for this series is entitled, this is the Good Earth framework, Spread the Light, Be the Lighthouse. Spread the light, be the lighthouse. Again, this is the second part of our series entitled Renewal, Resistance, and Reimagination in South Africa, Igniting the Embers of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, for me, is not just what it has become in so many ways for many around the world, just a slogan that folk had a good time, copywriting and, using here and there and throwing around everywhere. Ubuntu in its essence is not just a vision, but a call to action. It is a way of being, a way of belonging, and in fact, it is a way of becoming. And that's why I have that tagline there, igniting the embers of Ubuntu. It is part of the action and engagement we are all called to be. And we want to do our part, right here from South Los Angeles, with the network that I have, in South Africa. And today I got some friends, some family joining as we get at the truth and try and see if we can bring some analysis, but also some strategies for action. I'm joined by, several folk from my hometown of El Dorado Park, and so glad that they're able to join us. These folk are on the front lines around what's going on, and so we would want to welcome my brother Tony Sauls, attorney Tony Sauls. He's a co-founder with me of Beloved Community Coalition, and we'll talk more about what we seek to do and accomplish with our coalition partners. So it's great to have Tony here, and he'll share with us just what we've been doing throughout COVID-19, but especially these last couple of days and weeks around what's going on in South Africa. Also have Cheryl Pillay with us. Cheryl is not just friend but family. We go way back as fellow Methodists. We grew up together in El Dorado Park, and she has continued to do impactful, I would say, ministry there, because that's how she looks at it. And so we're looking forward to have Cheryl here. She is the founder and executive director of Comeback Mission. And so we'll hear from Cheryl, and just looking forward to it. Cheryl, I've been seeing all the pictures and the videos, and as always, very, very inspirational in so many ways, and just so encouraging in everything that you are doing, and really, really appreciate what you're doing and how you do what you do. Looking forward to our conversation around some responses, that Comeback Mission continues to lead, in the greater El Dorado Park area. We also have Dr. Mary Augusta Adam with us. She's an obstetricianist, I hope I said that right, or OBGYN, at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. So we're going to catch up on COVID, and then also what she and Cheryl has been working on just around, the response for renewal and relief, that's going on, in that part of Johannesburg. And looking forward to that. And then want to welcome my my fellow Atlantic fellow, senior fellow, and she is none other than Constance Mohale. And I'm so glad that she made some time. She's crazily busy right now doing a lot of stuff with the work that she's doing as the national coordinator, around Rural Democracy Trust. And just the work of what's happening in our rural areas. She's an organizer, she is a visionary, and she's a leader, leading right there from the farm straight up into urban streets, way up even into the Constitutional Court, in South Africa, and just a beloved sister, and I do appreciate her. I want to say greetings, everybody, and welcome to Faith Without Borders. Good to see everybody. We want to go ahead and I wanted to, I hope Dr. Mary is here already. Doc, if you are there, how is you? All right. Dr. Mary, are you there? Okay.
Good evening from South Africa.
All right. There.
And from the south side, I'm sorting out the camera. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay, she's sorting out the camera.
Yeah.
We want to start, there she is. We want to start off quickly just to get an update on, of course, the pandemic. Right now, that we are in the third wave in South Africa, and this wave certainly has been devastating in so many ways. Of course, we are now dealing with a surge here in the U.S. LA County is one of the epicenters for that, and so the Delta variant is just really devastating right now. Yesterday, I was part of an emergency convening, with researchers and some of our, doctors. As well as faith leaders, just to hear the numbers and to look at the numbers and to see the numbers. And it's not looking good for us in terms of what's happening here, especially, in black and brown communities. And so we are certainly alarmed by this. And I'll share some words about this at the end. But just give us a quick update, around what's happening, with, the state, of COVID-19 in South Africa, and how are we responding to that, just to kind of frame, where we are, around the pandemic. Dr. Mary?
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. And it's great to be back with everybody to share what's happening in South Africa. And to our panelists, it's always a pleasure to share this platform for you to bring about information and just this collision of information, taking it to the people. So good evening, and it's great to be with you. Yes, COVID-19, we're still on an upward trajectory throughout South Africa in our major provinces. Our cumulative total number of cases have now reached over 2 million cases, close now to 2.5 million cases. So we are steadily on the increase on that. In terms what we haven't discussed previously is in terms of the age groups that have been affected with COVID-19, especially when we're going to listen to our president this evening in terms of what are the strategies moving forward. Are we moving out of level 4? Are we going back to school? What is the way forward in that? So just in terms of the breakdown, in terms of the age groups, particularly with the third wave and the Delta variant that we're experiencing, we're noticing that a large number, or not a large number, there's an steady increase in the number of COVID-related deaths in children younger than 1 year. And when we look at the number from 1 to 10, the age group there, we're seeing that there's about 77.8 thousand cases in that reported group. Then 11 to 20, that number goes up to 192,000 in that group. But the largest group continues to be the 31 to 40 group, which is 537.1 thousand cases that we have seen in our country. The less of the groups, because we were always concerned about our elderly with comorbidities. In that age group, they're quite similar to that of the 11 to 20 age group, which is the 61 to 70, which is 192,000 cases. So yes, the numbers are continuing to increase within the definitely the younger group between the ages of 21 to 50. So this group, we need your attention, and we need to really strategize when we're looking at our development and relief programs in terms of education in these groups. Then in terms of our gender, mostly affected by COVID-19 up to date, we have the female population, which is about 1.3 million that have been affected by COVID-19. And then males are 1 million. So it's not that much of a difference, but certainly the female population are leading in this group. And perhaps they would seek medical help more than our male counterparts, but also other programs such as our antenatal programs. These are clinics that have been running consistently throughout COVID, where with every admission, they would get a COVID swab, COVID testing. So these are strategies that have been put in place also to screen and test within our population. And then in terms of over a 24-hour period, this is still something that is of concern. And in the last 2 weeks, we've been seeing double digits in the thousands. And over the last 24 hours, I'm not calculating for today, this was yesterday's stats of 9,700 cases that have been diagnosed with COVID-19. And a lot of this has been through super spreader events, and one particularly what we experienced last week, and we're seeing that effect now with the riots, the protesting that we've had in South Africa, and then now currently in the Western Cape, also potential super spreaders that of our taxi industry, where commuters are bundled up, no social distancing within the taxi ranks and that sort of thing. So we bound to see again a steady increase in these numbers and the number of COVID deaths coming shortly.
Yeah,
so that's just an update in terms of numbers.
Yeah, that's certainly alarming. And let's talk a little bit about access to testing on the one hand, and then also I know the vaccine is continue to be rolled out. I'm getting images of friends and colleagues that that have signed up, and they're getting their vaccination. So let's talk a little bit about access to testing, so that we can make sure that people are properly diagnosed, and then because their diagnosis then set us on a path for what can happen next within Folk. And we're going to talk about what how you and Comeback Mission and that COVID-19 forum in the Greater Orlando Park are responding to that upon a diagnosis, and then maybe talk a little bit about how the vaccine rollout that probably was a little delayed because of the unrest, how that's going. But let's start just with access to testing and how that is going.
So definitely our programs have improved since the beginning of COVID-19, February 2020, to where we are now. Because certainly it's not only allocated to hospitals where testing is taking place. It has expanded into communities, community centers. Like your community healthcare workers that go out into the communities, they have stretch tents, they have awareness campaigns with regards to testing. So access to testing initially was a problem because obviously there was a fear and an anxiety about going to get tested and having that result of being COVID positive and not understanding what it means to be COVID positive, and then having to have either mild, no symptoms, being asymptomatic, mild to moderate symptoms, and having severe symptoms. So there was still that fear. And even when somebody had a sore throat to go and test, they were like, well, I don't really have symptoms. So, but in terms of access to testing, that has certainly improved, like I had mentioned. So one can get that through drive-through facilities, through their general practitioner, through their local clinics, and then also at the public hospitals. At public hospitals, it's a little more structured because we have two streams of testing that's taking place. One that is for your symptomatic patients that present to a hospital, and then they actually have their testing done at that point, and then they don't gain access per se into the hospital, but they get their assessment and treatment at that point of testing. And then the stream where they're asymptomatic patients, so they have no symptoms. Those patients are then assessed within the general population or clinics of the hospital, and then they have their testing done when being admitted. So in the community, those are patients who present with symptoms to their physician, to their local clinic, to a campaign that's happening either through a faith-based organization or through a local relief program that's happening within the community. The challenge is not necessarily the access to these facilities, but it's really about the testing kits, the testing equipment that needs to be available for the testing to actually happen. So we don't want patients or people to come to a testing facility and then there's no testing available for them. So the sites are there, the capacity is there, but in terms of the staffing, in terms of the resources, that's where we might have a challenge.
Great. I want to welcome those who are joining us via Facebook, and we appreciate you, and we're going to be checking in with whatever questions they have, for us. Let's quickly switch to vaccination. Of course, just like in the U.S., we're having a hard time achieving herd immunity because of misinformation that's been going on. That's the same thing, of course, in South Africa. So can you give us an update as to where we are around the vaccination and that rollout that's taking place, and how is that, being done? I know we've talked about some other ways to facilitate, access by trying to get the vaccine as close to people as we can, even beyond, just mere clinics. Around that, because that's what we are gearing up for again here, is to utilizing, churches, and other, community sites, as vaccination sites, so that we can get, the vaccine as close to folk as possible and make it, as inconvenient as possible. Try and see how we can, be effective and efficient in terms of getting those shots in arms, or jabs as we call them, in South Africa, around that. So just give us a quick update on that, and then we'll move on. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, I agree with you. We've discussed it in length previously, where we've come from in terms of our vaccination. And I encourage our viewers to go back and look at some of those podcasts. But where we are currently is that we are strengthening the partnership between public and private enterprises to actually ensure that our communities get the right information, number one, and have access to vaccinations. And in the public sector at present, we have just over 2,200 sites that are actively working, some of them which do work from 7 to 4 p.m., 7 days a week. That is still something that is also being revised and trying to be improved upon. And then in the public sector, we have over 314 sites that includes our private hospitals that are facilitating the vaccines. So currently the numbers are over 5 million people that have been vaccinated within the country. And what is a positive response is that we are currently in the adjusted phase 3, if I can say, because it has changed slightly from the original plan where it was healthcare workers, then over the age of 60, then from the age of 35 over. There's a slot that has been made for teachers to be vaccinated. So a large number of teachers have come out and actually been vaccinated, close to 200,000 teachers, if I'm not mistaken, have been vaccinated. So that's a good response from our education department. And the aim is still to vaccinate close to 300,000 per week. And in the last week, when they opened it up for the 35 and above candidates, that actually reached that 250 mark, that our 250,000 mark that our president was aiming for as a weekly average. So in terms of, we started slow, we took a steady pace into it, and now it's picking up. So what's also great, if you look on social media, the response from celebrities, social influencers, people in that age group have really taken the step forward and have put their word to the vaccinations, showing themselves getting vaccinated, as well as promoting vaccinations, even speaking about the side effects that they may have experienced or not have experienced, and even educating through that platform. So that is encouraging to getting our young people vaccinated.
Absolutely. Let's roll into some specific communities today. Before I bring Constance in, to share a little bit about her community and what's happening there. How for us, of course, Greater El Dorado Park, which includes not just El Dorado Park, but Kliptown, Klipspruit West, etc., on that southern, on that south side of Johannesburg, zoom in for us in terms of in a particular community such as the Greater El Dorado Park area, how are things going on, how are things going, in that particular community. Are you there, Dr. Mary?
Sorry, I was just unmuted for a minute. I just want to be clear. The question is
just zoom into the Greater El Dorado Park area, just to give us now a snapshot of a particular community and how are things going there, because that's going to be when we talk about some practical strategies of renewal, relief, etc. We're going to zoom into at least El Dorado Park today, as we look at that. So just give us a snapshot of Eldos.
I'll be very brief on this because I really want to give Auntie Cheryl an opportunity to really speak on El Dorado Park. But in terms of the COVID-19, it has been severely affected by COVID-19, that it has been regarded as a hotspot for new cases, transmission of COVID-19, and certainly also deaths within the community. And therefore, the need for us to really bring about the message of the protocols that are in place, number two, getting the word out, and then also the relief programs that are available within the community to assist in getting those programs achieved. In terms of initially with the vaccinations, I wanted to just mention this. When the program actually originally was set out, El Dorado Park was not part of the vaccination sites. But I'm glad to say that the POP Center, which is on the main road in El Dorado Park, has actually been designated and is now functioning as a vaccination site. And that should be promoted and allowed for people to go and access that as a vaccination site.
That's great to hear. That brings back so many memories when you say the pop center. Oh my gosh! But anyway,
Yeah.
yes, I had a couple of flashbacks just with you saying the pop center. So just
Yeah, and that's
let's
like almost the core of where a lot of development programs had started
that's
outside of the
right.
churches. The Pop
That's
Center
right.
was a central place in Aldos. If you wanted to do dancing and different forms of dancing, martial arts, music, the Pop Center is the place. And now in the pandemic, it again features as a landmark site in our community. So it's really it should become a historic site, I think.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and of course, it's named after a man who loved that community, an
Yes,
educator, a principal,
yes,
that served in so many ways, Mr. Pop. So that's just great. I want to
yeah.
switch to because I want to get back to Colorado Park with Cheryl and just zoom in on just the strategies we used. But I want to bring in Constance, here. Constance, are you there? Can you hear me? Connie, are you there? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. I wanted to just quickly, give you an opportunity, Connie, to share with us how is, how's your community doing during this, these challenging times. Of course,
Yeah.
dealing with the unrest as well as, the pandemic. Our sister Dora posted her picture that she got vaccinated, so it was great to see Dora's, picture. She was with me, last week. But you are our rural conscience in making sure that our rural communities are not left behind, because there's a lot of emphasis on urban communities, but a lot of folk forget our rural communities, and what's going on there, the challenges that we are facing there. We've mentioned the whole piece, around, what does it mean to be excluded, the injustice going on. Give us just a snapshot, Connie, if you will, just around how our rural communities, and you can talk about yours specifically, has been affected, on the one hand, by the unrest, but also on the other hand, around COVID-19 and how it's
Mm.
playing out with our rural sisters and brothers.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor Calvin, for creating this platform to speak about communities who are in the peripheries, who are often not celebrity communities or high-profile communities, for their struggles to be in this in the open. So, in my community, when COVID-19 started, there was announcement of so many packages, relief packages, programs that is gonna assist people to survive, because they will be in a lockdown and nobody will be going to work. So there has been disparities in terms of income. But the rural community, and my community in particular, was mostly affected because of the geographical location. So when you talk of the apartheid spatial planning, where which determines who gets what at what pace. So you will find that rural communities' infrastructure is not well built to survive or to react to this kind of pandemic. And now we found out that now rural communities were even better off than communities like Lenasia South, where I stay, communities like Orange Farm, communities like Alexander, and those who find themselves without shelter and a residential address to be located. So it has been a problem because these problems were not created by the COVID pandemic. They were there, but they were not dealt with. Our country didn't make sure that they build systems that will react to this kind of disasters in a manner that will cover and encompass everyone, irrespective of their class, location, or race. So we were caught unprepared in a way that we were exposed. So the relief that were announced at the beginning of this pandemic we suddenly vanished. We don't know what happened to the 500 billion. And we raised expectations that there's going to be food parcels coming, there's going to be messiahs coming from outside or from somewhere, from NGOs, from parastatals, trying to help people. But because of lack of accountability and transparency, and which has been a problem that has been there in South Africa ever since, even before 94, we couldn't sustain that. So there was no explanation as to why. Even the kind of help that went to people, like in my community, people received vouchers, which were like purchase vouchers, or what, it was like not cash, it was like a voucher, non-transferable voucher that you can approach a supplier and get some input cost on that. But those vouchers were also not coming through. So big capital received, benefited a lot because it was dictating to people where to buy. And where to buy was not always near to where people are. It means a voucher of 4,000 rand, you still have to spend transport to go and fetch those goods in a supplier which is located more than 100 kilometers away from you. So, and local producers that we work with, Dora and I work with, are producing tomatoes, perishable products like vegetables. Those vouchers meant that you couldn't source or buy from those local traders or local small-scale farmers because it was meant for big retail people. So that has been a problem. So the Zuma moment was just an opportunistic moment for people to vent their anger. It is not a movement that I think we should stop giving credit to politicians who have been allowed by this state to appoint their own kind of service providers or public servants that will drive their corrupt agenda. So it was just a moment, because when you lock people away and there's no escape route, you put them in a corner, and it is just a matter of time until they push, because there's a limit in squeezing that solidarity moment, because people were depending on solidarity economy, where the neighbor will say, okay, I've got some more, I'll share with you. But there's a limit. You can squeeze, but there's a limit. So there's been a problem where Africa, because even this vaccination, it is not equitable. I'm happy to hear Dr. Mary telling me that there's free testing centers, because I know that if you are supposed to test, you have to have a medical aid or 850 or 1,200 rand. That is the minimum you should pay for tests. It means those who are locked down without any income, without any food, people who have to debate with themselves whether the 800 should be used for groceries or for testing for COVID. You understand? So it means we left many people, we marginalized many people outside. But before I leave, I want to talk about the solidarity economy that have been squeezed as well, locked down and squeezed. The church. The church is a networking platform where people come, share their problems, and get some kind of spiritual help or counseling to deal with their problems. It is not only the church. There's so many other forums, like social movement forums. The work that I do as the Alliance for Rural Democracy coordinator, we were told, stop. You can't go to work. You cannot gather. You cannot do this. Probably it was a good response towards the pandemic, social distancing, physical social distancing, no physical contact. But the capital didn't stop because people were being evicted from the land. People were being evicted because they couldn't pay for their rental. Women who are locked down and they are professional women had to now juggle all the balls at the same time because you have to take care of the children who are now not going to school. You have to make sure that you still cook and do all those because your helper cannot come to work because of the lockdown. So those are the so many sorry, there's
There
this
you go.
annoying
We can hear you now.
sorry, there's this annoying call that keeps coming in.
Yeah.
So locking away the church and those forums was not a solution because as African people, we have all these gatherings like weddings where free food is available. People are able to go and have something to eat at church or at the wedding or at the party. So when you lock people out of each other and there's no help coming in. My other elder comrade, Mesizani Ngubani, passed away in her own house with no help. We found her after 14 days when the body was like was about to decompose. It is a very, very sad situation that we find ourselves in, and we see government being weakened because they have created a shadow state. The police cannot control violence because the police themselves are guarded. They've got securities at their gates. So you find that there's always, when there's the Department of Correctional Services or Home Affairs, there is also a shadow department. There is agencies that are doing the work that the government should be doing. So it's overwhelming, and we have been trying to reach out to the president to say, if when last did public servant recruit young policemen, young medical practitioners, young everybody? There has not been employment. The public service have been weakened. The consultants have been working for government, and now we are not able to respond to this pandemic effectively. And those who suffer are those who are, or we are calling today, looters. So I'm not going to be saying the looters. I'll be speaking from a position. I cannot also say it is wrong. It is wrong, or we correct the wrong by doing the wrong. Right. The state has been looted. The parastatals have been looted. Now, but we are making noise about the the micro looters, because those are micro looters. You understand? So, but and who's wrong and who's not myself as to how do I respond? And if we are not pulling our socks and our tools together, we are going to have to surrender to the master, which is the capital. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I want to just lift up a couple of things that you said, and then we're gonna know you're having some internet challenges, and really appreciate patience. That one, there's been several epidemics before the pandemic, and I think those epidemics, provided the undercurrent, and that was, and then the whole Zuma piece was just a spark to all of these undercurrents. That was almost like a tipping point around it. That's one that we have to acknowledge. The second one, is that, one of the moral crises in South Africa has been corruption, and we all know that corruption is a direct a threat to the vitality of any democracy, right? and one cannot talk about, looting in the streets without talking about looting in the suites, right? So there's been a lot of looting going on of the state treasurer, treasury, if you will, just as there a lot of looting has been going on, in the street, and you're right, one wrong don't create another wrong around that. The other piece that I think is very, very important is just the ongoing, a quest for integrity, transparency, and accountability. These are, fundamental building blocks that keep and sustain, any democracy, around that. And that unfortunately has gone by the wayside, you see, and what we are getting, is just ongoing empty promises, screaming matches, but just the lack of, delivery, has just been, extraordinarily disappointed in terms of that. I don't want to lose, you, because we do want to talk about, and this is part of what the work that you are doing, and I want us just to spend a few minutes on that, and then we're going to get back, to some of our practical responses and bring, Cheryl and Tony in, and that is really, to talk about, the 18th constitutional amendment, and its, implications for land reform, because that's a big piece, that we're dealing with. We're still dealing with that in the United States, where a lot of folk are still in denial about, stolen land, stolen labor, right? In this country, that folks just don't want to deal with nor talk about, right? So land reform is still a huge challenge, here in the United States, and we saw what happened in Zimbabwe, and now there is some focus on this, around that. So I know you and your organization are doing a lot of work around land reform, especially how it impacts our rural areas. So Connie, can you just give us some perspective, around that, in terms of just implications, and where are we with that, and what can we do, about that?
Okay, so Parliament has introduced a bill around Section 25 amendment of the Constitution. They call it the 18th amendment on the Constitution of South Africa. So we have been skeptical in supporting the move to amend the Constitution without compensation, expropriation of land without compensation, and the move to amend the Constitution, because we believe that Section 25 of the Constitution has allowed Parliament, has given Parliament powers to legislate laws that will make sure that land is being restituted, land which was lost after 1913, land is being redistributed to those who were marginalized or discriminated before, and Black people who lost land, and the tenure reform, subsection 6, 25 subsection 6, talk about people who were previously disadvantaged of land because of their race, color, the land tenure must be restored. And there has been, in 1996, there was an enactment of the Interim Protection of Land Rights Act, which allows, which protects land under tribal laws. So we are saying probably the amendment of the Constitution is a necessity in terms of the cut-off date of the Restitution Act of 1913. Because it limits and it allows land to be claimed only on the 9% or 13% of the land, and it limits the redistribution, the equitable redistribution of land. But we are saying, because land people are desperate now. They cannot wait for the amendment of the constitution. Look at how it's been 5 years now. We've been debating the expropriation of land without compensation. It has been 5 years now. Parliament has not published anything. They are still debating. They are still fighting amongst each other. We thought ANC voted with the EFF to allow for the amendment of the constitution to allow for expropriation of land without compensation. But now we don't know where the ANC is standing. They are renegating. They are muted. So we don't know what is happening. And that is why we're saying, why can't Parliament use Section 25, subsection 9 to legislate when government wants to do something, they can do it. It is the willpower, the political will that is lacking. We don't need to wait for the constitution to be amended for land to be redistributed. Because look at now the vaccination. It has been rolling out. They know where to trace everybody where they are. People are corresponding. Now they need to know how many landless people are there. Because without that data also, without that information of how many people are landless, how many people have land, who needs land for what? Because you can't take a person in El Dorado Park and give them land in Mahalisburg in a farm, far away from their social networks, from the life that they know. So we need to, people need land for different uses. They need to know, we need to know how many people need housing, how many people need land for farming, how many people need land for leasing, for business ventures, so that we know how we sort out and we satisfied the thirst for land, for different thirst for land. That we should do, and then after doing that, government must use subsection 9 to come up with an expropriation act that will allow for them to take the land where they see fit and distribute the land. Government must also come up with a redistribution act. So right now in South Africa, we've got a white paper on land reform, which has 3 legs, which is restitution, redistribution, and land tenure. We only have the Restitution Act. And we don't, on the Tenure Act, because the Tenure Act, there's a Protection of Illegal Eviction Act, there's Extension of Security of Tenure Act, which applies on farms and in townships. We don't have the Communal Land Rights Act, which applies in the rural countryside. We wonder, why is that delay? When the rural countryside is fading away, the big mining companies and big mega projects are infiltrating the communal land. They are colluding with the traditional leaders to take land from the people and to take the livelihood of the people away from them. Mm-hmm. When government takes trucks of load of food parcels to the rural areas where farming is happening, it is an acknowledgement that they have not redistributed the land for people in the rural areas to produce and make sure that people in the urban areas are fed. They have enough to eat, whether through purchasing or through other solidarity means. So it is a disgrace for you to carry vegetables to my village, where there's a lot of land that was supposed to be used for the same purpose. Right. So we are saying Section 9 allows them to make those programs, to also come up with the acts, because remember, the act and the programs, they are different, because with the act we are able to hold them accountable and take them to court when they are not delivering. But with the program that comes with every political appointee that comes into office, we are not able to hold them accountable. They come with their program, they have changed programs, they have not redistributed the land. Right. So we are saying as the Alliance for Rural Democracy, amending the constitution is not a solution for the immediate crisis that we see. People are taking the land emotionally. They are not even planning the land, where the schools are going to be, where the industries, where are they going to work, how are they going to pay the electricity, how they are going to sustain their livelihood. Because they have been waiting and waiting in queues. Now they are just gripping. They are gripping. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is our position on the amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah, that is so helpful for us to just get to understand the difference between an act, right, and a program. A program is very, very subjected and laid with, political, intentions, from a particular individual or individuals, right? Whereas an act, as you say, one can call for, tracking the implementation of it, whether that implementation is being done with integrity, looking for transparency, and again, being able to, facilitate accountability, around that. One of the key pieces in this series is going to be that we're going to look at, what are some immediate short-term solutions that's needed now, and then what are some long-term structural and systemic solutions that we need to, look at. So we're always going to kind of go in between these, two, because you cannot do one without the other. You've got to look at responding to immediate needs. You've got to look at responding to, long-term spending, long-term systemic, strategies, to look at. Connie, thank you so much, for providing some perspective both around immediate and, long-term responses. While we're looking at all of that, of course, we do find ourselves still in this pandemic, and I want to, go back to some just immediate, responses. As always, when the government is slow to respond, if they respond, one thing that we can always be assured of, is grassroots leadership at the forefront, who have been listening to people. They are responding, in innovative and creative ways. I always say that is the power of proximity, and it gets no more powerful demonstration than what's going on, around the El Dorado Park COVID-19 forum that's headed up by Cheryl Polley, and so we're going to get into that and just look at what are some of the practical, immediate, innovative, and creative responses that they've been working on. As part of that, Beloved Community Coalition, has been working with over 20 grassroots organizations, across the country, where we really, listen to, these frontline, grassroots leaders. We learn from them, and then we seek to leverage resources, with them. And as part of, that ongoing listening process to grassroots leaders, we've identified, almost like a ABC strategy, that can both deal, with, relief and recovery due to the current unrest and uprisings, while at the same time, also responding to what's happening around COVID-19, and then, look at some long-term pieces. The A of this ABC strategy is, activations, to provide access to food. Activations to provide access to food. The second one, the B, is building bridges to home health care, because of the fact that a lot of people can't get to the hospital quick enough, or the ambulance can get to them. And I'm very, very excited about this piece that we'll hear about in a minute. And then the third one, the C, is coordinating neighborhood safety teams. Coordinating neighborhood safety teams. These are basically, teams that are out, at night, and they are patrolling to making sure that those who seek to engage in looting, destructive acts, especially around shopping centers and grocery stores, et cetera, that doesn't take place. Very excited about that as well. So now, I want to bring in, Cheryl and Tony, who they are all on the front lines, and we are glad to be in partnership, with Comeback Mission, as well as that El Dorado Park COVID-19 Forum. Mary, calls you Auntie Cheryl. I know you go by so many names, around that. So Cheryl Pillay, welcome, welcome. How you doing, my sister?
Evening, everyone, and it's so good to see all of you. Nice to see you, Calvin. Nice to be part of this panel this evening. So much excitement.
Yes.
Mary and I don't see each other often, but I speak to her like every day, being part of the COVID response team as the doctor. So yes, it's good for me to be here. It's nice to speak about innovation from the community.
Yes.
So firstly, proud to be part of the El Dorado Park community that has really fed in and bought into this. I think if I just go back to last year with the first lockdown, and we started a program called the El Dorado Park Disaster Forum to address the humanitarian response to COVID in our communities. And there's a lot of little things then that happen, because I think we were four months into COVID when we got the first food parcel from government in the community. By then, we had already worked on our Feed 5,000. And most of the resources that was given was basically by community activism, our own community resources, people that just supported the initiatives. And proudly, we went over our Feed 5,000. During that time, I don't think many people thought about it. Many mommies couldn't buy baby blankets if they were giving birth. And we have a group of ladies that just sit and knit baby beanies, booties, and blankets. And we could give to Chris Hani Peds Ward 300 of those. And that came from community activations. So here we are in 2021 with a level with the pandemic and again, looking at the third wave, what is happening this time. And the first need thing that arises is the amount of people that is ill at home and cannot access hospital soon enough. And how do we then address that? We then looked at creating a first responder team. And that was done very fast. Just got a few volunteers together and say, guys, you are trained paramedics. Please come on board. How do we do this? Get a couple of doctors that's local. I think Dr. Mary didn't even know what she's letting herself into. And the next moment she was on this group that never stops chatting, because the calls comes in fast and furious. People is struggling to breathe at home. The wait for an ambulance is anything from 4 hours to 6 hours. When we had the unrest the last 2 weeks, last week there wasn't even ambulances available. So with the pandemic and the breathing issues, people need assistance immediately. And who best is the people that is on the ground, that knows the community, that can respond within 15 minutes. They would be at max at someone's house, do the oxygen readings with oximeters, BP machines, and then have the doctors on back in then saying to them, okay, do this, do that, consult telephonically, which has really helped a community that normally would be marginalized in that situation and not have the resources available and the response time that quick. So yes, it's been awesome. It's been amazing. Teamwork coming together, saving many lives out there. And people are just fearful of going to hospital at the moment. Families don't want their family members to go to hospital because There's the whole issue about they're not going to come. There's not enough beds. You have to sit in the emergency room on a chair waiting until the bed is available. Even our private clinics was taking strain on that. So that's the team that was set together basically to then leave an oxygen concentrator depending on the prescription of the doctor and then follow through from there. And the team goes back, revisits the patient to ensure that treatments are followed, whatever was given, prescribed by the doctor. So that's one part of the program that we have. On the other part, we have
so Cheryl, Cheryl, I
Yes.
want to stay for a few minutes on the on this, home health team, because I would like for you to. I know Tony did a great video, and we're going to put that on our Beloved Community Coalition website. Just to explain, because I mean, when you explain it, and we see pictures now of you and your team, when you explain it, in terms of, when a call comes. So let's say, somebody calls, the response team. Just share with us a little bit of what happens after you guys get that call and how that community home team, gets activated, around that. Can you just kind of walk us through that? Because I think that's quite fascinating and innovative.
Okay, so what would happen is we would get a call saying we need help. My mom is not breathing or she's struggling to breathe. She's COVID positive. Then be activated because we have a team lead that's on the first responder team, and they would then put the address out. So we have 3 teams that's made up of a paramedic, a first responder, a health and safety person to ensure that full PPE and everything is covered. The team would then say, I'm responding, team A. So they would then get the address, get the contact detail, and go to the house where the call came from. When they're at the house, a first responder would then go in, obviously full PPE goes in, armed with an oximeter, a BP machine, nebulizer, whatever they think would be being needed. From there, they would do the readings on an oximeter. Our doctor team would then be reading on a group where that screenshot is posted. So, for instance, Dr. Mary will then say, no, those oxygen levels are too low. Can we put the person on oxygen? Then give the levels that need that patient. The first is the patient for at least 30 minutes, constantly communicating, constantly sharing the vitals of the patient where they are. The doctors would then give whatever they feel is necessary for that moment with the responder, checking the vitals all the time. And on many of the instances, it would be recommended leave the person on oxygen for now because that's what is required. And that would be the process. And then call 2 will come in. Sometimes we have 3 calls, 3 patients that a team would be, different teams would be responding to at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating and innovative, and just appreciate, what you all have laid out around consultation with your physicians, and mind you, we have to say that the physicians that work with you, they still work their full-time jobs, and that's why right after you get the numbers from that person, it gets posted on a site that the physicians, no matter where they are, have access to, and they can then do almost telecare or teleconsultation, right, with the team that's at the home to try and see, okay, what equipment ought to be utilized to at least stabilize this person, around that. Is that correct?
I think we might have lost Rev
Okay, so
due
Mary,
to network.
can you share a little bit about?
Essentially, yes, essentially, that is the process that takes place. The group is active. Currently, it's a form of telemedicine. And, it speaks true to one of the terms that about 2 years ago, one of the staff at Baragwanath called me a Skype doctor for purely helping one of her family members in the Eastern Cape, because one of my roles at Baragwanath is wound care. And so we did wound care using telemedicine. So it was quite a familiar platform for me to get into to work with this team. And it's such a privilege because this is our community to work with this and to actually do this and to see the impact that we're having. Because yes, the hospitals are full currently, and even for patients who are scared to go, the first aid or the first response team really make an impact when they get to the house to allay fear. And then with the readings that Cheryl had mentioned, and then in terms of us assisting and guiding from using the WhatsApp groups, and then also in terms of telephonic, because where we need additional information, because as you know, we have the POPI Act now that certain information is quite restricted. So then we do telephonic and then sometimes even video conferencing to actually assess the patient and give direction.
Yeah, I'm just excited about this and love it. And we at Beloved Community Coalition are in partnership with this forum and support them. I want to bring in Tony in a minute, but I'm going to ask Felicia to put on the instruments or the equipment that the images you've sent us, about some of the equipment that this team utilizes, around there. Dr. Mary, can you kind of just tell us what are some of these, instruments we're looking at in terms of is that the oximeter that's being shown right now?
Yes. So the images that you're seeing right now, these are oxygen concentrators.
Okay.
And these basically turn air using electricity to generate pure oxygen that can be distributed to a patient. These are mobile units that can be used. And yes, it is often, as Cheryl had mentioned, in terms of administration of oxygen has to be done with the prescription. So that's why it's important for myself, Dr. Fick, and the other medical team to actually advise in terms of using these equipment, what flow rate needs to be given and how much oxygen over a period of time, and the assessment of the patient. So these are the oxygen concentrators, mobile. So these go from home to home. And then there are ones that actually also remain within the home depending on the patient's condition. And then the first aid team not only just attends to an emergency, but what happens is that they go back and they review the patient in 2 or 3 days' time. If the oxygen concentrator is left at the patient's home, they actually go the next day, and then they do the vitals again, which include the BP, heart rate. So BP is blood pressure, the heart rate, the temperature, and the assessment of the patient. I see and Cheryl is back with us. Perhaps she can also contribute, but essentially that's it. So the need is quite great in terms of the oxygen concentrators, because this is different from your oxygen tank that needs to be filled with oxygen. The benefit of having something like a mobile oxygen concentrator is that it works on electricity or battery life. Yes, in South Africa, we do have challenges with Eskom and that, but this is still a good option where you don't have to go and fill up oxygen tanks, because oxygen is very, very scarce in terms of the gas now, where you can then use an oxygen concentrator that actually converts normal air, or not normal air, but air into oxygen.
Right.
Yeah, so we need oxygen concentrators, the pulse meters, which is the one that goes on the finger that actually looks at how much oxygen is actually taken into the body and how much is actually going through the red blood cells to the vital organs and to the periphery. And then the other is the blood pressure machines that help us as well. Even this team is amazing because not only that, but they can actually look also at the sugar levels. So patients who are diabetic or chronic diseases, they're able to assess that also at that point in time, and we can advise as well.
Right. And those are some of those comorbidities that one has to also monitor, around
Yes.
that. We at Beloved Community Coalition, we've made a commitment to assist with some fundraising. I know, Cheryl, Tony was with you guys last weekend and was able to bring, a financial donation, to you all for just the work that you're doing. Did you want to add anything else? Because I do want to bring Tony in so we can talk about, how we can continue to be supportive, around this. There's a sheet that you sent me, around just a fundraising that's going on. I'm going to ask Felicia to find that sheet and just put it up there. Cheryl, anything else that you want to add before I bring in Tony?
Yeah, I sorry, I didn't seem to have network problems, but I'm sure Dr. Mary could carry it through.
Yeah.
One of the other things that goes with the medical thing is obviously the care pack, which has the vitamins in and it has the basic home remedy kind of thing with basic panados, those kind, because people don't have access to panados or basic vitamins or immune boosters and things like that. So that is part of our response as well to the COVID pandemic. And I just wanted to marry the two.
Yeah. I mean, that's just wonderful. And I saw even you guys giving oranges, ginger, and just, whatever immune boosters, you can give so that families can kind of know what to do at home. The power about this is really what we are about at, Beloved Community Coalition. I mean, our mission essentially, really is to organize and mobilize people power to accelerate the eradication of inequalities and inequities for fairer, healthier, safer, thriving, and more inclusive communities. That's what it's about, for us in terms of that. I'm going to bring in, Tony, my brother, from the same mother. My brother, who's a co-founder of Beloved Community Coalition, with us. Tony, I know you've been on the ground doing an extraordinary, work of connecting, with our coalition members, making sure that, resources get to them to do, food distributions, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to just invite you to just share some perspective, around, our work as BCOCO, what you are seeing on the ground, and just some thoughts from you.
Thank you, Calvin, and also very good evening to our co-panel members and also those on Facebook and Instagram joining this panel discussion. Beloved Community Coalition was formed on the basis that we wanted to become part of the solution to the problem that we see existing in South Africa. And not only in South Africa, because we reached out beyond the borders of South Africa. One such mission that we took was when the pandemic hit South Africa last year in about May, June. We participated in facilitating and raising funding for Vaal University of Technology, who turned one of their programs and laboratories into a mask making facility. And we helped funding or grant funded that program for them so that they could actually manufacture much needed PPEs such as the reusable masks. We also reached out to as many as 23 grassroots organizations countrywide, and the Beloved Community Coalition then managed to raise through our network abroad and locally to raise up to about $300,000. That was between June and November last year. And then also furthermore, from between January and March this year, we managed to raise about $270,000, a little more than $270,000. But this time that was between mid-January and end of March this year, 2021. And that was for about 25 organizations. We now have about 27 coalition member organizations, grassroots organizations who work with us. The reason why we work with grassroots organizations, we decided on that objective because we know that grassroots organizations are really the organizations who really serve and act as servant leaders on the ground to benefit the marginalized and the less privileged. So we are continuing to expand our mission countrywide also, because in South Africa alone, we have 25 organizations growing to 27 to date. And then last week, about 10 days ago, when we had a bad experience of the looting taking place in the country and so on, the need became even much bigger. So what we've decided to do when we received the call on Thursday last week, for example, from both Cheryl's organization and then one of our coalition organizations in Alexander Township, we acted speedily within about 48 hours. We had some funding that we raised on the ground, and we ensured that both Cheryl, Alex Man at Work, and House Group and Sage could receive some much needed assistance so that they could do their home care mission work, and also doing some food parcels and distributed it to the much needy in our areas. And then in a nutshell, that's what our coalition is doing, our coalition organizations are doing, and how Beloved Community Coalition, or Beloved Community, BCOCO in short, in terms of the need and how we reach out to ensure the least that we can do to the least privileged and also the marginalized. Mm-hmm. One of our key objectives as BCOCO is to ensure that we make sure that, when you run alone, you can run far. But when you run together, you can run even further. And that's one of our key objectives, is to form like-minded strategic relationships and partnerships with grassroots organizations and faith organizations in order for us to reach out to our people and answer the call. So we don't focus really on the problems and challenges that exist, because we all know it. Therefore, one of our key objectives is to be part of the solution. And we also trust that our story will grow, our mission will grow, and with the necessary partnership and assistance and relationships that we build with our outreach work, that we can also grow sustainable. Because another objective of BCOCO is to grow whatever work we're doing. We're looking at beyond COVID and beyond the challenges that our organizations are currently facing in terms of how communities can become self-sustainable now and in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to ask Felicia to put that logo on with the website that we want to send people to. So just check out our a website. There it is, bicocode.africa. And we have been, doing some fundraising. There is, a way for you to join us. You can make a donation, with your credit card, and 100% of what you donate, goes to, the work that we are doing, around the country. Also, what we want to say is just much appreciation to our donors last weekend that stepped up, around, Nelson Mandela International Day, and we were able, to raise, around $1,500 or so dollars, that enabled us to facilitate, that ABC strategy that we've embraced now, around that, and that is, the activation, to access to food, and to support the El Dorado Park COVID-19, response forum, in terms of the work that they're doing around building bridges to home health care. So we're excited about that, and we'll continue that, and to facilitate, not just the health, but the safety of the community through coordinating, neighborhood, safety teams. So check out the website for that. It's all about how we come together and see how we can spread the light and how we can be a lighthouse. That's an integral part of how we seek to engage in renewal, resistance, and reimagination, in South Africa, and to ignite the embers, of Ubuntu. That's what it's about. That's what our ancestors in South Africa did. They were never defeated, even though they were surrounded by, the darkness, of the ideology and the theology of apartheid. They always engaged, in renewal, in reimagination, and in resistance. And so we are stepping up and stepping into, their footsteps, facing the rising sun, standing on their bold and broad shoulders to keep on keeping on. I want to thank, my guest today on Faith Without Borders, Constance Mukhale, for bringing perspective to us around what's happening in the rural areas, as well as, what's going on around the long-term systemic changes that we need to see and structural changes we need to see in South Africa. So appreciate that. Dr. Mary Augusta Adam, is there on the front lines doing what she's doing, whether she's in, at the hospital at Chris Hani Baragwanath, or in the community, with Cheryl and her team, on the front lines right there in, El Dorado Park, facilitating access, to health by way of those home health care teams that I'm just thrilled about, around that. And then, to my brother and partner, for what he's doing through his network, and how we are leveraging our networks to see how we can facilitate, renewal, continue resistance, and most of all, engage in reimagination for a just, fair, and equitable South Africa. Thanks so much for joining me today. Glad you've been with us. Go and be the light.
Thank you.